Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Comcast Business, Lou Parisi.
Hey everybody, so my name's Lou Parisi. I'm the Director of Marketing here for the Philadelphia region for Comcast Business. We've been a proud partner and sponsor with PACT for many years, but we're even more prouder sponsor for this next panel where you're gonna hear some esteemed experts who are gonna talk through some of the themes from earlier today. But as I kick it over to our panel and welcome them to the stage, Kathy Baxter and Peter Coffey from Salesforce are going to also start us off and kick this off with a short video. So let's get excited. I'll welcome the panel and let's cue the video.
I'm Peter Coffey with Salesforce, and I'm joined today by my colleague Kathy Baxter, Principal Architect in our Responsible AI and Tech group. And I do want to emphasize, Kathy, responsible AI and tech, because in the bright sunlight of everybody being so excited about AI in general, generative AI in particular, the understanding of the holistic nature of fairness and what we at Salesforce are pleased to call ethical and humane use of technology requires a reminder that it's a much bigger picture. The fascinating and complicated center point of generative AI gets so much attention right now, and it would be easy to overlook the possibility that you're using generative AI in a context that is thoroughly troubling from a fairness and humaneness point of view. Kathy, the evolution of our own holistic understanding of this at Salesforce is really quite interesting, isn't it?
Yes, we have traditionally, although we've had AI in the company since before 2016, it was in 2016 that our CEO, Mark Benioff, announced we would be an AI-first company. And so I started really working in that area when he announced that chatbots would be one of our first products. And that was the same year that Microsoft Tay, the chatbot that was taken off the rails by...
As they say, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah,
exactly. Right. And so it was released on Twitter, and in less than 24 hours, it turned quite toxic. And so my question and concern was, how do we not do that? And so just on my own started working in the area of AI ethics and pitched that as a role to our then chief scientist, Richard Socher. And he said, yes, we need that as a full-time role. And then later that summer, Mark announced that it's not just AI that has potential ethical risks. All kinds of technology has ethical risks and considerations. There are many ways that it can be made not inclusive, not accessible, not trustworthy for individuals. And it's not just consumer, it can also happen in enterprise software as well. And so he announced the creation of our Ethical and Humane Use Office. And in December 2018, hired Paula Goldman, and so that's the formation of our office.
And one of the signal accomplishments of that office has been to be in the room when product decisions are being made and not be brought in to try to construct guardrails after the fact.
Absolutely, we have an entire intake process, and it's probably sounds very dry and nerdy and painful, but when a product team is starting to work on a product, they have a number of things that they need to do. Once they've written their PRD, their product requirements document, they need to file a legal review request and a security request and an ethics request. And so from the very beginning, teams have to think about all of the different kinds of risks and safety that they need to put in place. So just as they think about how do we make sure that this software or this product or this model is secure, they also have to think about how is it trustworthy? How are we going to assess for accuracy and bias and toxicity? So
Kathy,
it starts from the very beginning.
Was famous for saying at one point that what you decide not to do can sometimes be almost as important as what you decide to do. And I'm wondering, are we at a point where it is possible to say if you can't do it in a way that's reliably governable and demonstrably capable of being done in a way that's fair, you probably shouldn't be doing it until you can?
We always say, ask not just can we do it, but should we do
The
it?
Jurassic Park question?
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
if you don't have the representative data to be able to train your model, it's going to start with bias from the very beginning,
Yeah.
where it's going to work great for one subset of the population and terrible for another subset of the population. If you're just scraping content off the web, you're probably going to get a whole lot of nasty things that go with it that you then have to take effort to filter out. So you have to go in with that ethical mindset from the beginning to ensure that every step along the way, you're doing the checks, you're doing the repairs. Because if you wait until the very end, you're going to be incredibly limited in the amount of harm that you can undo, or the amount of harm that you can patch over.
Well, the timing of this is so perverse because we had barely begun to digest the implications of GDPR and notions like right to be forgotten when a technology came along in which even understanding if forgetting is architecturally possible is a fraught proposition, isn't it?
Yes, and similarly, explainability.
Yes.
Uh, Tons of research has been focused on explainability. And I think many of us felt like we were in a pretty good place for predictive AI models
Mm.
to be able to explain how they worked. And as soon
Yeah.
as you're getting into neural nets, that becomes incredibly difficult.
Well, we were able to put up a panel on the screen that said, I'm making this recommendation, and here are the red, green, and yellow reasons why. And the
Yes.
human was invited to come in and say, oh, okay, that thing you're calling a yellow flag, that's irrelevant here. And I think this brings up a phrase that I believe is very important to you, which is human at the helm. That
Yes.
the ultimately many of the things that people regard as not doable in AI are doable once you accept the necessity that there's a human in the loop.
Absolutely. There is, we like to say that human is a great assistant, but it works best when it augments human capabilities. And so many people are probably familiar with the phrase human in the loop, but that implies a passivity, that the human is just there to be
Be a circuit breaker
notified.
or a okay. Human at the helm, you're right, is a much more active implication of a role.
Very much so,
Yeah.
and it comes from more of the traditional human factors engineering kind of background. That's actually what my background is, and it's all about having that human that is driving and deciding when to take recommendations, when to use the AI, when to assign something to an AI, when to double check and say no, this is not accurate. And so we try as much as possible to put in what I like to call mindful friction along the way. So raising flags to say, hey, this content might contain toxicity,
Mm,
read through it carefully,
mm,
or citing sources. So in a customer support scenario where the AI is generating a response for the customer based on taking a whole bunch of knowledge articles,
mm,
synthesizing them together, and then giving a nice, concise answer to the customer,
mm.
then listing for that customer support agent, here's all the articles that this answer was drawn from. And if there's something about that answer that just doesn't look right, then the customer support agent can look at the list of articles and see, wow, this is talking about a version of our product from 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So clearly somebody hadn't gone through and like pruned out all of the old versions of our knowledge articles. And so basically the generative AI, when you do RAG, when you do retrieval augmented grounding, telling a model, look at this set of articles. This is the source of truth.
Yeah.
You can really increase accuracy, except when those articles or those documents are not accurate, when
Right.
they're old, when they're out of date, when they're incomplete.
And you and I hope, have been able to provide context for the panel discussion that's going to be following the sharing of this recording. Kathy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think those two events or speaking activities were great segues into what we're going to talk about. I think Mike showed us both the incredible creativity, but also unpredictability of Gen AI, especially with Claude. And these models do have personalities. I think Claude's supposed to be more empathetic. I think we saw some of that shining through as we engaged her in this session. And then obviously, Peter and Kathy really talking about, how do you do this responsibly? And I think that'll be a great segue when we start to think about the amazing potential of these models. And I like to use the term iPhone moment. I got to live through the mobile wave as part of Mobiquity, and we were building some of the seminal apps in retail, healthcare, financial services. And one of the things that happened back in the mobile wave, I don't know if you guys remember this, I think people over-indexed on the app and the technology and underestimated the amount of organizational and operating model change required to really unlock the potential of mobile experiences. And in many ways, we see the same things repeating itself in the AI world, right? Where we're very focused on the technology and the model, and there's an enormous hill to climb on transforming the underlying organizations and operating models. So really anxious to hear from this panel on what are some practical steps to not only build momentum, but build longer-term business impact for what we can get out of this amazing technology and what the potential is. Clearly we've heard all the glowing estimates from people like McKinsey and $4 trillion and 40% of working tasks that can be automated, but that's only going to translate if we can actually get our organizations to absorb it and put it to work. So I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves, your role, a little bit about how you're thinking about or playing a role in shaping AI in your own organization. So let me start with you, Rick.
Sure. Hi, my name is Rick Rioboli, and I'm the CTO of Comcast Cable. So within Comcast, I'm responsible for IT systems, cloud, data, and AI. So the combo is pretty good given everything that we're doing right now with Gen AI. And I guess we have a little bit of a long story, but we kicked off a program about a year and a half ago called Mosaic, which is how we're sort of leading AI across the company. And I'm partnered with our head of strategy in running that program.
Thanks, Rick. Sophia?
Hi, this is Sophia Velastegui. I am an AI business leader, advisor, and board director. Formerly was the general manager of AI products, as well as chief AI technology officer at Microsoft. Our team integrated ChatGPT or OpenAI into Microsoft products and business application, and was also alum of Google and Apple, and run multi-billion-dollar revenue P&L around AI products for decades.
And I'm Rick, the other Rick, Rick Nucci. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Guru, and have been in building companies in Philadelphia. Before this, I was the founder of Boomi. And Guru is a product that helps businesses create a search and answer experience inside their company. And so think of what we do as connecting technologies like generative AI with the enterprise data that is needed in order to make a lot of use cases really work and really come to life. Customer service teams, IT teams, HR teams, all different kinds of teams need to solve, stop the shoulder tap and create the source of truth. And so we've been spending a lot of time around on AI to help really level up what we can do.
Thanks, Rick. And I love the fact we have the bookends of startup, or emerging business and large established companies, certainly in Comcast and Sophia, somewhere in between. And I was remiss, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Scott Snyder. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at a company called Eversana. We're about $1 billion pharma tech company, so we help accelerate life science products to market. We're kind of an ultimate test bed for AI because we have an in-house marketing agency, a Salesforce, a customer support, patient support arm, and a supply chain. So just about everything that can be attacked and reinvented with certainly digital and AI. So excited to be here. Sophia, I'm going to start with you. And I guess, when you think about companies thinking about AI transformation, where do you think they might be getting it wrong?
So I've been talking to various board directors as well as C-suite, and as well as the consultants as well. And a lot of them talk about how to be more effective, productivity, being operationally more efficient. But the biggest gain that is a opportunity, but the biggest opportunity is actually in the innovation and new products. Think about the customer service that you receive, and it could be amazing, but will you be willing to pay extra for that? Versus a new product that solves a situation. And we love to think that technology can solve all our problems and also be willing to pay for it. And so that's the biggest opportunity. And what I've learned at working at the Magnificent Seven companies is, yes, focusing on operation and efficiency is effective, it is, but the biggest boon and why Apple and Microsoft and Google became what they were and are is through the innovation they leveraged with AI.
So really, in some ways, it's a combination of you got to get moving, but don't think too small. And I kind of see the same thing. If you're not creating the culture bottoms-up innovation to get the organization moving, but also if you're not taking the opportunity, clean sheet of paper to think future back, are you going to undershoot the technology and the capabilities? So I'm going to go to the Ricks and talk about, how are you using this moment to rethink your offerings, your operations with kind of this new wave of AI? So I'll start maybe, Rick.
Sure. So at Comcast, the way we've been approaching it, it's a bit of a top-down and bottoms-up at the same time. So we've been using AI for the last 12 to 13 years. We built our own voice remote. Some of you may be familiar with the voice remote where you talk into the remote and control your TV. So that was based on our own. Yeah, that was based on our own natural language processing that we built internally. And then we built it into our image recognition, into our cameras. We built it into our network as we went through COVID and a lot of the traffic patterns changed. We actually started using AI to modify the modulation schemes in real time to optimize the upstream bandwidth for everybody as they were working from home. So we've used it in cyber, we've used it in our chatbots. So it's been pretty prevalent in our company for the last 12, 13 years. When generative AI came along, we looked at it as a sort of a basket of new capabilities, right? Because previously we had all the ML capabilities, but now there's a new set of capabilities. We started looking at it. I said, you say it was a solution looking for a problem. And usually when I say that at Comcast, I say that in a very not so positive way. But I was trying to be really positive and factual about it. It really is it's a bunch of capabilities looking for a problem. And so that's the way we started to approach it. We said, from a top-down perspective, what are the biggest problems? If we're looking for problems, let's go find the biggest, most impactful problems that we could solve for the company. And so we started top-down that way and started looking for big problems, and we came out with 4 big ones that we called big, hairy, audacious goals. And then at the same time, so we went after them from a business outcome perspective. At the same time, we came in bottoms up and found a couple innovative things that we could do through our lab week, which is our developers coming up with their own ideas, and we started executing on some of those in parallel. So it's been a dual-prong approach.
So you really have a little bit of little I, big I innovation going at the same time and meet in the middle and learn along the way. Yep. Rick Nucci, you guys, same thing. You've been in the AI world for a while. Things are changing. How do you think about operations and organization transformation? So.
Yeah, we've worked on AI for a long time at Guru, and I describe it as generative AI is highly consequential to our domain, what we do as a company, right? And I don't think you'll ever, I think everyone has the personal experience of being at work, and it's hard to find the information or resources you need to do your job. It's a well-studied problem, right? And it leads to a lot of shoulder tapping of experts inside the company, and I think the problem is very understood. I think solving it is immensely difficult. And I think Guru's been around for 10 years, and I think pre-generative AI, I think we, moved the needle, but I would say compared to what I think we see now, it already feels a bit night and day. Now, I'll give you some examples. One of, I think, the biggest challenges that teams always contemplate in this area is how do I start going about solving the problem, right? And usually where that comes from is you're sort of looking around in your SharePoint file repository, or you're scrolling through your Slack channels, or you're looking around in Google Drive and you're like, wow, we have a lot of stuff in here. And there's useful stuff in there. There's sort of needles in the haystack, but how do you actually find the good stuff and ignore the bad stuff? Because the very first rule in any type of software like this, if you tried standing up a wiki, or you tried standing up an intranet site, or you tried creating a search engine inside your company, weirdly, if you were listening to that video from the Salesforce folks, they were describing the problem right as it ended, kind of perfectly. But you only get a few chances, because you go in and you start looking around for information, and what often happens with these types of products is it just sort of reveals this vast staleness and inaccuracy problem that exists with all of this kind of documented knowledge. And so what generative AI has allowed us to do, quite frankly, is kind of rethink all of those old problems in a new way. And so now we can understand the state of accuracy of the underlying content and knowledge inside the company. Now we can take large documents, large amounts of information, and generate just the answer to the question the person was looking for, right? And I'll kind of stop there as examples, but it's just vastly different than it was before. And I think, to your question, when we saw GPT-3 come out, we were like, okay, this is, like I said, highly consequential moment. This is like a, Guru is kind of reinventing itself moment, and that kind of sparked a whole bunch of change for us.
Yeah, and you have the advantage of an installed base that, you can bring some of this to. It's interesting, you're kind of getting to a little bit the next question, and I want to start with Sophia. What are those use cases that you think represent quick wins that you're seeing, but maybe some ones that have big potential but are probably going to take more time? And I love Rick was kind of going on this conversational analytics. How do I talk directly to my data and my knowledge? But Sophia, what are some things you see on the quick side but the longer term side?
Yeah. First of all, AI is not cheap. That's always been the case from the time I worked at Apple on various apps that were very successful, Google with Nest product and other devices, and then at Microsoft and Aptiv. And so knowing that's the case, it should serve a purpose. I know there are some that says, hey, we had 1,000 flowers bloom. That's going to be very costly. I know that in Google, they do lean into it, but they also win the lottery every day with the margins that they have with search. And that is not usually the case with most companies. Number two, what Rick at Comcast stated about how does this align with strategically and value to the customer and the business, both in efficiency but new opportunity and experience, as well as what are the things that's friction or pain points for all of us that we're just like, God, I have this software, I have to do documentation, the bane of my existence. By the way, any software engineer that says they like it, they're lying to just appease someone, but it's something that is required in order for that software to be successful. These are great opportunities, but how do we, small and big, how do we have small wins, but it serves a purpose? Let us be intentional with AI. that it aligns with something of value that we want to de-risk in a smaller scale so we can do something larger. What do I mean by that? So for Microsoft and GitHub for software development, we said we will provide in situ notes while you do software. And you can review it. The developer can review and say yes or no. That's really low. You get feedback really quickly. Now, from that, can you then write the release note for the whole application itself? There's bigger risk if it's wrong that our customer experienced. How does that happen? But what happened is along the way, you had checks. Those are quick wins. We found that software engineers had 20% more time because it's something they don't want to do. They procrastinate like hell. People are following up and all these other things, but 20% more time was given so they can do what is more valuable. And that actually fed into something larger. How can we now do the release process? How can we do marketing information? How can we target the different features in the software for different customers and their needs? But it wasn't just because somebody just thought of it and thought it was great. It was in service of something larger. That's how we actually learn. And that's how we also get value. I think that is the most important.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that's something that most companies could take advantage of, anybody developing software, which is exciting, and you don't have to plunge in all the way. It sounds like you can chip away at it. So,
but it could be any, what I'm saying is it's not just the product itself, but there's aspects like, is there an environment in operation that's not as high risk environment? You're in financial services and there's a regulatory environment. Can you do something in operation that is not in a regulatory environment? Prove out the model, prove out what we're doing and the process.
Where the risk of an error or the reliability tolerance is much easier, right? Pick those cases. So Rick, Sophia hit on that issue, the reliability, but also kind of hit at ROI, which I know right now is opaque for a lot of these type of use cases. So how are you thinking about the short-term, long-term use cases?
Yeah, so for us, it turns out, actually I was saying earlier, top-down and bottoms-up. So it turns out our top-down, those are very outcome-based, like multi-year outcome-based. And so those are sort of long-term. And the bottoms-up are really the quick wins. So our two big areas of bottoms-up, one is software development, as Sophia was saying. It's a no-brainer. We use GitHub Copilot. We went through a fair amount of pain going through all the legal pieces of that to make sure like no IP ekes out, no IP comes in, like a lot of like goo, legal goo to get all that done. But once it was done now, we've deployed it we have about 10,000 software developers. So we made it available to all 10,000. We have about a little over 4,000 using it today with really good results, like positive. We're actually looking at it from a statistical perspective as well as feedback, and it's been all great. So that's no-brainer in my book, very low risk. And then the other area I would call is knowledge retrieval, enterprise knowledge retrieval, which is exactly what Rick was talking about. It's a no-brainer from our standpoint. We have all these unstructured document repositories in the companies, exactly what Rick was talking about. And being able to get access to that from like a question-answer perspective. So what we've started to implement there is a platform we call Ask Me Anything, which is a retrieval augmented generation application or platform. And what we've started, our first set of use cases around frontline assistant. So if you're a chat agent today, you have access to this tool that we built internally, which is pretty straightforward, and it'll answer any questions against our knowledge base. And so we deployed it to, I think we're at 5,000 or 6,000 frontline employees that are using it today, and really great feedback. And there's actually like operational metrics, as Scott was saying, that are really showing great results. And then next month we're going to deploy it to all the call centers. So that's an additional 35,000 frontline agents. So it's real. I mean, and this is coming back to the earlier conversations of the day, right? There's parts of this that are a ways out, but there's very high utility, low risk stuff that we can do today. And so we're just being super aggressive with doing those things, knocking them out, getting experience with all this, and then just continuing to grow with it as the technology matures.
Yeah, and that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing too, is we've plotted our use cases on kind of reliability risk and business impact. And the stuff that's below the reliability threshold, like content creation and review for us is a massive amount of hours because we have an in-house agency. We're using things like Adobe Firefly. We've built our own review tools. Those are things where you have enough humans in the loop, you can control the error rate, whereas we're probably not going to be releasing a patient-facing self-service Gen AI tool for a while until we really understand we can achieve a certain level of performance and reliability.
Yeah, and along those lines, one thing I just add quickly was, so when we actually got better responses because all these are internal documents, it's all, it's all fairly low risk. Our quality of responses for this RAG implementation were really good for frontline employees. We thought we weren't going to want to put this in front of customers for quite a while, and we just launched it to customers last week to 100% of customers hitting our chatbot. So I did a double take when I heard, I got the email saying we went to 100%. I'm like, oh my God, is legal on board? Is that like I did one of those panic attacks, But yeah, everybody was totally on board because the responses have been fantastic. And we got enough quality from feedback from our internal employees to then know that it was good enough to go to external customers.
That's key, because you don't want an Air Canada moment with the wrong offers. So I'm going to ask all of you to weigh in on where you see the biggest risks in AI deployments or the things that might keep you and your colleagues up at night. So maybe, Rick, I'll first start with you.
Yeah. I think both of my panelists also had really interesting answers to this. So I'll talk about the hype cycle one because I think it's a good one. And like one of the things I admired about the way Rick set up the strategy at Comcast was he said, look, there's this long-term multi-year vision, and then there's like what we're doing this year. And I think that is the plot that gets lost a lot, right? And like we have customers come in and they'll kind of be in both buckets, right? And what I would call the pragmatic, what's a problem I can solve today that fits the criteria we just talked about is wonderful. The other one is more like, reading an article about, AGI, artificial general intelligence, and agentic workflows and things that are just not ready, and sort of trying to connect that to today. And I think it's hype cycle, right? I mean, I think like AI is like the meta hype cycle of all hype cycles. It's such a hype cycle that we like gave it seasons, right? It's been like a hype cycle for 50 years, and there's AI winters when things aren't going well, and then there's AI springs when things go better again, right? Now we're in a big AI spring. But I think one of the behaviors in that is you sort of lose the plot on the, hey, what do we think we could do in 3 years, and what can we do right now with where the technology is today and step towards that? And I think that framing is just so critical to, two things. Not only setting yourself up for success, but, there are vendors who will gladly feed into that hype and will gladly oversell and will literally,
especially consultants.
but will advertise it as a product is the difference, right? And will gladly, some of the products that we've seen, and the panel during lunch was talking about this, are almost like dev shops framing what they do as product, and it's just really dangerous, and it's how things go from the hype, the peak of inflated expectations, right? Gartner calls a hype cycle into the trough of disillusionment. So, grounding in problems today, understanding where the technology is at today. You don't have to be a data scientist to understand that, by the way. The amazing thing is you can put your hands on these AI technologies yourself, which is really amazing. So connecting those problems you have today, business problems, with where the technology is today, and hey, there's an exciting tomorrow, but there's steps to get there. I think that's the biggest thing I see when we look at customers coming in. When they're in that bucket, amazing. I think they're going to move the needle and solve real problems like Rick was framing. I think when they're on the other side, I think it's setting up for a disaster.
So, Sophia, is it more likely that things are going to blow up or stall on the enterprise side because of lack of real ROI, or is it going to be because something bad happens, like the Australian grocer who was recommending chlorine bleach in their recipes on their app for customers?
I think the second one is the one that's going to be more likely, right? Because trust is really important in the system. and what it's able to do or can't do. So one of the things you'd hear Rick at Guru stated about the hallucination and the hype is that there is hallucination, but it's not a bug. It's a feature, because that's how it was created. And what that means is LLM is based on all the information on the internet, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the very ugly was removed with traditional AI. So to not use traditional AI and only say generative AI is what we're gonna do will open you to a very risky environment. So that's number one. Number two is, what are you gonna do about that, right? If you know that this is, and know what to expect, then you can start working on it. The question you asked before are, what are the biggest risks? There's three that come into mind. Number one, anybody that says they figured everything out, know what this model is doing, is BSing. I've been working on AI from like Apple early days, Google search to, so like what Rick and Guru says really resonate, and then Microsoft actually incorporating ChatGPT. And even there, I know that there's so much to be had and so much to learn. And what that means is, that doesn't mean that we should sit on the, somebody before says, this is a river, and then, we have to see what the gap is and whether we should cross or not. At this moment, this is going to be the smallest gap between those who work and use AI and those who do not, because AI is advancing exponentially. And that will not stop, because AI is also leveraging each other. So that's why some of the growth that you're seeing, it will actually accelerate. That doesn't mean to just engage haphazardly. I love the way Rick at Comcast says, like, there's a governing aspect of it, because you know what? Even if you say don't use it, they're using it. It's like teenagers. People are so excited about it, they want to test it out, and the more you say not to do it, they're more excited to lean into it. So instead of exposing oneself to liability, how can you provide some guardrail, and it will change. You will learn more in this operational environment, in a safe environment, to take on bigger risks because you know it better. And so I think those are the three risks. Anybody who says they know it all, I would be cautious about that. But also think about those who actually executed AI. Because AI is not just about the data scientists who are math geek, it's a system, an ecosystem. Number two, standing on the sideline will not be optimal. There's a liability of not doing anything, and I think that risk is even greater. But if you do proceed, there should be an aspect of governance and boundary conditions or some guideline, because that's when you can get real value and be more intentional.
That was a great primer. We have an article coming out of Knowledge at Wharton next week on these risks, so awesome summary. And I agree, this risk of not moving is a real risk. And it sounds like you guys have decided we're going to move, but we're going to move in somewhat of a structured way and balance it.
Yeah. I mean, so there's lots of risks and lots of concerns, but I think ultimately, take what we're doing right now with the RAG implementation for our frontline employees and starting to put it out to customers, right? So we are monitoring the heck out of it. We're running all the statistics. We have people staring at the results. So it's just like any other. I look at this as, any other IT platform, right? There's so much focus on the LLM, but what we're really deploying here is, as Sophia was saying, it's an end-to-end system. It's an ecosystem, and just like the rest of the AI that we've been doing for the last 12 years, you have to get all the end-to-end metrics in place. You've got to get all the monitoring in place. You've got to just really understand what's going on in your end-to-end ecosystem, and so lots to manage, but. I think if you're on top of it all and you're doing it sequentially and you're being really careful with it, I think you start going and just start moving forward and keep advancing it.
Yeah, and we forget that we have humans in our workforces that also are unpredictable and have error rates in the work they do. So it's a little bit putting new types of guardrails in.
Yep.
One of the things that underpins all of this, we're not going to move our organizations unless we can get the talent base to move and see themselves in this AI-first future or AI-first version of our companies. What do you think are the big things that need to change in the talent model, whether it's for an individual worker or the broader talent model. So I don't know if you want to kick that off, Rick.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll start. Quickly for us, I think we have such a large workforce, and we really want everybody thinking positively about it and engaged in it. And so we're really starting out with, calling it assistants, calling it co-pilots, whether it's for the software developers to make their lives easier, or it's our frontline agents to make their lives easier. We're looking at things around document management that might make our legal teams' jobs easier, or a marketing team around creative that might make their jobs easier. So we're talking about it in the context of assistance to help our employees, not the removal of entire job functions. We're not talking about taking people's jobs away. We're really just trying to make everybody better at what they do. And I think that's a great starting point, and starting to help people see how they can experiment with this and training them on some of the use cases, I think is a logical start for us.
So everybody got a free intern or sidekick. What are you going to do with it, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Rick, one of my colleagues at Wharton, Ethan Malik, talks a lot about the new labor model or work model is going to be either cyborgs or centaurs, right? Centaurs being this clear delineation between AI is going to do this, humans will do that, and there's clear line between them, versus cyborgs where it's interleaved into the way you work. Any thoughts on how you see equipping people to work in those environments in the future, or what you've seen from your own model so far?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the latter for the next,
to really get the value, yeah.
3 years, I don't know. Any number you give, it's like, well, then next year, the world changed again with some AI thing. But let's say the phase we're in now, I think it's interleaving. I think that UX and product design, I think there's a couple of skill sets in enabling AI, I'll call out two, that are I think become even more critical than they were before. Because the role of a data scientist has actually changed quite a bit. I think before generative AI, most AI projects were like, oh, you need a data science team and you need to build a model. And I actually think a lot of how things are getting built now are more engineers that are explorer mindset, right? So I think two roles I would call out. One is product designers, because the interleave thing you said, I think, means that there's a whole different way that humans and machines will interact. And I think the pattern that we all, brilliantly, that ChatGPT got us on was just chat. It's super simple. You type stuff to the thing and send stuff back to you. We all do it with humans every day, all day. Brilliant. Makes total sense. The whole world can relate to it, right? But there are actually quite a bit more human and interaction models to make the interleaving work. There's this idea of augmenting your workflows that's going to require us to really go deep into how employees spend their time and do their work. So I think product design UX is just going to be this elevated critical craft. And then the second role I would call out inside the workplace is, I'll call them generally ops type roles. People who understand the content, the data. We've talked a couple of different times around, a lot of AI things in the workplace are revealing critical problems around accuracy and staleness and duplicate data, redundant data. I think companies have had these ops roles forever, but it's they've been waving the flag. We have a problem, we have a data problem here, and everyone's like, yeah. Now I think it's going to be it's going to put the data problem on display, because if you and I are talking to each other and I'm asking you a question, you can look up the data, you can get it, and you can translate it back to me, right? But now if you're going right to an AI system and the AI is going and fetching the data and doing stuff with it, it doesn't know that. It's going to give you the stuff right back. So if the policy on X is wrong because the document's wrong, well, guess what, right? So I think ops roles are going to become these critical kind of stewards of AI systems inside the workplace, and I think will become more in the spotlight, more visible, more hero mode for the ops people is what I kind of hope will happen.
Yeah, I think data integrity is a big one for sure. So Sophia, you and I have talked about this kind of with workers in the future. The soft skills become the hard skills again. People that have analytical judgment can look at content and say, does that match, is that consistent with our brand, or does that look right? People that can detect bias in data that Rick's talking about, or data corruption. These are skills that, maybe aren't front and center today versus some harder skills. And Stefano Pontoni and Wharton talks about the jagged frontier. People that know where AI is within its domain and where it's weighing in on things where it shouldn't.
Exactly.
And knowing when to toggle. Can you talk about that a little bit, and how do we get workers there?
Yeah. So as I said before, the hallucination is not a bug. It is part of the feature. And if you know that, then you know when it is to use it, when to lean into it, and when not to, right? One of the things that you talk about, some of the soft skills, I think the most important soft skill, the talent, is curiosity. As I said, the gap between those who know AI and those who don't, this is the smallest, and AI is changing. And think about a year and a half ago, 5 years ago, our knowledge about that. That's not going to stop. Technology inherently is about change and advancement and leveraging itself around it. So how is there a workforce that's curious to learn about it so we can be intentional and master it to get the business value? The soft skills that you talk about, like who has that strong analytical program? Do they have, or is there a culture of that from the companies they have gone to? I know that there are certain companies that when I was at Microsoft, we targeted because they had an excellent background in their analytical skills, as well as like constantly learning, because this is a new way of doing things. Microsoft actually went, like it was not an AI company. We think about it now, we're like, of course it's an AI company. It wasn't. It was a software company. It was Windows, right? Very, very different from where we are now. It's being able to reinvent itself, and is there a culture inherently that allows you to do that? Because I would say that was not the case under Ballmer.
And also be accountable for what AI spits out, right?
Right,
Like that
right.
We don't want people just tasking it for research and passing it on
Yeah.
versus judging the output, right?
Right. And what you are talking about is how do you have feedback? And the importance of human in the loop, like in both Rick's cases, is we always want human in the loop because that's the system they're providing us value in the real world. And without that feedback to the system, then it gets lost, right? And it won't be as optimal for us in our society. About the talent side, outside the curiosity, is how to upskill AI, leverage across all job functions. I don't care if you're a farmer, you're using AI and you'll continue using AI. I don't care if you're a financial analyst in the bowel of the financial system in Wall Street, you will be using AI and even more so. Everyone here has done a Google search or a Bing search. That is actually leveraging AI. When you do mapping, that is leveraging AI. But we're comfortable with it. So how can we get comfortable with generative AI in a safe environment?
Yeah, the only jobs I saw weren't at risk were professional athletes, dancers, and ditch diggers. So I think we all have something to think about. I'm going to open it up to questions. Try and get my sunglasses on and see.
I know. I was thinking
do we have any
too.
questions for this amazing panel? Yeah, there's one over there. Can we get a microphone? Thank you.
I'm sorry. I had a question. Someone on the panel mentioned AI ops. I know this is a lot about generative AI, but being in that field, especially if you're making Copilot available for all your employees, how are you now starting to think about using AI or ML for operational insights?
Rick, you want to take that one?
I'll kick it off and pass the other Rick if you wanted to, because you mentioned it earlier. So we, when we look at the software development piece, I mentioned GitHub Copilot, but that's just right now, that's really just sort of like the code completion as well as chat capabilities. But we're looking at the whole end-to-end ecosystem. So we're looking at it all the way at the front end of how can we use generative AI to create the stories and do a lot of the design work that we typically have a lot of design people doing. And then on the back end, we're doing a bunch with the testing and then operations. And so we have a program actually called AI for Ops, because we're clever. We just use the AI for Ops. And the whole idea there is that we have a system that does anomaly detection. So we have all our different systems, and we're running anomaly detection them so that we can just see when things are off. And then we also have like a dependency graph that shows how each system is dependent upon others. And so when you're running anomaly detection and you have a dependency graph, you can start doing root cause or event correlation. So all of a sudden you could have a fiber outage, and instead of having alarms going off all over the place, system goes, okay, all these systems are red right now because they're all affected by that, but it's this one fiber outage over here that's causing it. And so that's what we're leaning in a big way in an AI ops to be able to enable that across all the Comcast systems.
Cool. So real-time analytics and insights for sure. Anybody else on that one, on the AI ops?
I think you started the whole DevOps and AI ops.
Yeah. I'd say most of our users within our customers are in ops roles. Rick talked about customer service. That's probably our number one use case. He, I think, described that perfectly. The other functions would be people ops, internal IT, and sales ops. And I think what all of these groups have in common is different flavors of that RAG pattern that you heard Rick describe around, how do you enable those teams to ask and answer questions? And there's usually this like small group of experts and large group of people who need that expertise. And the experts are just getting buried all day with shoulder taps, and they need a source of truth, that sort of thing. And so usually our sort of like champs who are using the product are in one of those embedded operational functions, and they're looking at it going, hey, like if it's support, it's like every minute counts. Can we close more tickets in an hour by bringing in technology like this? If it's sales ops, it's similar. Can we ramp reps faster? Can we increase the quota to OTE coverage on reps because they can work on more things because they aren't spending time digging around for stuff? It's sort of those patterns of efficiency that these, I think all these different ops functions have in common.
Yeah, and I just add one thing. I think one of the areas companies might be missing the mark is not treating these AI solutions or GPTs as products that have a real life cycle that need to be supported and redeployed. And you have things like model drift and re-optimization, and it's not over when you stand it up. Yeah. It has a life cycle. So
I just want to reiterate what Scott said, and maybe that's the intent of your question. AI, like we talked about, how do we have small wins and then it gains bigger wins and long-term win. You can have a small win, and it'll be a great proof of concept, but you have that have an operation aspect of it, and think of the ecosystem for it to scale and be consistent across the different experience and the products that you're looking for. Without that intention, it's a one-off. Yeah. And they're great one-off, but that's not how you actually extract value from AI.
Great point. Any other questions from the, we have one over here, one over there. Try and get to both you guys.
Yeah, I think my question is very related. With Comcast, with the RAG implementation, how did you figure out all the relevant documents and old? I feel like with big companies, a lot of documentation is old and we don't know whether it's accurate. So how did you go about it? And how long did it take?
Yeah, how long did it take is I'll tell you in a couple of years. But yes, so that's one of the biggest concerns. So what we tapped into is we have a big knowledge base today that we use for all our frontline employees to be tapping into. And so starting there, that had to be somewhat cleansed because that's what they tap into today. And so that's where we went to first. But when I was talking about our rollout of this capability, our techs, the techs that drive around in trucks to come to your houses, they're not going to be until the fourth quarter. And the reason we're lagging them behind by 2 quarters is exactly that. The documentation that we have for them is not as clean as the other frontline employees, and so it's taken us an extra 2 quarters to actually clean all that up. And one of the things we're actually hoping is some of this technology will be able to actually help us find the duplications and find the data that's not good, and it'll actually help us sort of scrub the documents. But that is taking a fair amount of time, and to the earlier comments, that is like one of the biggest concerns, because the algorithms could all be right and everything could be right. If the documents are bad, we're going to get bad answers.
And sometimes you got to put it in the wild in a small scale to see that. So,
see what's happening. Yep.
Well, it looks like we're getting the hook, so I want to give a big round of applause for our panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think most of us will be around. So look forward to talking more about it.